you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You just got to be the one who is going to work harder and hustle harder than the people in the room.
Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Mulvey. If you're a millennial looking for actionable advice and a proven formula on how to build the life of your dreams, then this is the show for you. Each week, I'll be connecting with inspiring guests who will be sharing their wisdom on how to reach success. So if you're ready to take your life to the next level, buckle up and enjoy the ride. What is up, Millennial Mafia? Thanks for stopping by today. Our guest is Nick Kullin, the founder and CEO of Second Flight Consultancy, a business development marketing agency focused on digital marketing. Nick was recently listed as number 4 on Entrepreneur's 27 CEOs under 27. Oh yeah, and by the way, he never even went to college. The dude is a baller, and you're going to see that in this episode. His never quit mentality truly encapsulates what this show is all about and the spirit of the Millennial Mastermind. Throughout his journey, Nick's faced and overcome challenges that would stop most of us dead in our tracks. I know that what he's gone through would probably leave me curled up in a ball under my sheets. But in this episode, he shares what he's learned through his life's trials and tribulations and how these lessons have enabled his success in business. The takeaways from this one will give you guys a framework to achieve your own success in whichever ventures you pursue. And I want to give a quick shout out to some of you guys who have been kind enough to go onto iTunes and drop a quick review. So a quick thanks to Big Ish, who said, "I love the Millennial Mastermind podcasts," and also the Common Zach, who left a comment just saying, "Great content." Love hearing that from you guys. That keeps me inspired and motivated to keep getting these episodes out and keep putting the work in on my end to deliver the free content that I do. And if any of you guys want to drop a comment and leave a link to like your website, or if you have a blog or a podcast of your own, feel free to do so, and I'll give you a shout out here on the show, and I'll also link back to your sites on my show notes so you get some backlinks from iTunes as well as from my site. So with that, let's kick it off with our episode with Nick Kullin. Hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. As always, super grateful to have you here today, and I'm joined with a fascinating guest who could not fit more perfectly into the show and what we're all about here on Millennial Mastermind. So with that, Nick Kullin, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on, Brad? Excited to be here.
Thank you. I am pumped to have you as well, because you've done some pretty cool things. And it's always awesome when we have fellow millennials on the show. You've done a lot already, and you and I are not too far in age apart, so I know that there's a lot I can learn from you, so I'm looking forward to diving into it.
Yeah, man, us millennials, we got to kind of stick together, especially in this big, bad business world. So I'm excited to drop as many value bombs as possible so we all could make out well in the end.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So to kick things off, would you mind just giving the listeners a brief background on yourself and some of the accomplishments that you've tackled so far?
Yeah, no problem. So a little brief bio on me, guys. So my name is Nick Kullin. I'm the founder of Second Flight Consultancy, which is a growth hacking digital marketing agency that started up around 4 years ago. Prior to that, I was the non-conventional, non-conformist kind of guy. Starting even when I was like a teenager, I was always looking for things that other people weren't doing. So when mom and dad were like, "Go get a job working at McDonald's," I was like, "Screw that! I rather do something better. I know there's more value I could provide in life than flipping a burger and asking, would you like fries with that? So I took some of the passion I had with figuring out programming and figuring out ways to kind of like make life easier. And I was also a musician back then. So one of the things that I was really fascinated with was YouTube. And a cool little hack I kind of like identified with YouTube was back then their interface was able to show whenever someone made a comment. So when little Justin Bieber with his high pitched voice was like all the craze, he was generating like almost 150 plus comments per second. And you would literally see a timestamp. So I was like, this is kind of interesting. I have, my own music and I have people that I know of. And I was like, these people, this average video is like maybe 2 minutes long, and getting the most engaged people who like to comment are like the hardest people to get engaged onto your video. So I was like, well, clearly I know they're on here. No one's using the messaging app. So I took advantage of an inefficiency of a platform and made it efficient. So I developed this thing that was literally copy and pasting like a madman, all these messages to people who were commenting on relevant, videos saying, hey, I saw that you recently, commented and liked Bieber's video. I have a song that I wrote, or this person that I know that I think you'd be really interested in. Let me know what you think. And if you like it, feel free to comment your thoughts and share and like it the whole nine. So what was cool about that was like out of like 100 messages that would get sent, you would literally see like a 50 to 60% conversion rate when it comes to people like commenting and then sharing it. So like videos were getting like tens of thousands of views per every like 6 to 12 hours. It was kick ass. It was awesome. And then I ended up flipping it and doing the same method of targeting, artists and bands who had under like 1,000 views and saying, hey, if you want to kind of like get more views on this, you could pay, 20 to, $100 depending on how many videos, and that's it. And I figured if I could just get 10 people to do it, that would be like 5 times the amount of money I would have made, part-time at McDonald's. So
yeah, how many burgers do you have to flip for that, right?
Yeah, so like long story short, it came to a point where I had almost close to like 40 bands at once paying around 50 to $100, and it was awesome. And then from that point, I just became obsessed with like figuring out really cool ways to apply this to all the new mediums, because during that time, as we all know as millennials, we kind of like grew up in it. We saw it. We were like the users who were on it, and we kind of understood it the most. And all the people that were in business now, they were just kind of like scratching their heads like, what is this thing? How does it work? And no one really knew actually how to do it well. And I was just like, I wanted to like be on top of that and start throwing my mad scientist head into all these unique and random applications. And that's what kind of got me my first few jobs without even a college degree, just from my the experience I had of my own kind of like hack.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time I was also going through some family stuff that kind of made me live on my own since I was 17 years old. And it kind of taught me a lot with like reevaluating what we know and what we perceive as the road to greatness and success. And at that time, some of you guys might be younger millennials. At that time I was kind of like in a weird crossroad of like, if I don't do this, I'm going to fail, because that's what society tells me, is the recipe for failure. And if I do this, I'm quote unquote supposed to be successful. And I'm sure a lot of you guys who are listening, and maybe even you, Brad, there's a lot of people who get sold this idea that, going to school and going to college is going to be the thing that's going to guarantee a life of greatness, or at least even a life of feeling like there's security.
Mm-hmm.
And what's sad is that is far from the truth, and coming from like the other end of the fence of this world of not going to college and grinding it out, like the real life experiences of doing marketing and learning marketing it's a two different thing. And at the end of the day, one of the things I learned and realized, and had a great mentor when I was like 18 years old, who told me, Nick, this is what's going to happen by the time you would have graduated, college, 4 or 5 years from the line, it's going to be looked at as a different way. Employers are going to be valuing more experience than a piece of paper. And if you kick ass in every single job that you have and develop that as like almost like your track record or your like client list in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the thing that would convince the employer to take the investment on you. Because, I think for most people, especially millennials who are trying to get a job, they have to look at it in the sense, and I think I'd look at this in this way now because I'm a business owner, and when I hire someone, it's an investment. I don't like to look at it as an expense, because if I'm hiring, let's say Brad, if I'm hiring you, I would hope that whatever I'm having you do generates like a 2 to 3 times return, whether it's in productivity, whether it's in revenue, whatever it might be, right? And I think we forget that we're supposed to be like investment properties for a company, and we kind of just go in like expecting a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And if you kind of go into the approach like, all right, I'm a product, and this is why I'm going to be the best thing for you, and you deliver it in that kind of message and that kind of standpoint, any hiring manager, CEO, or whoever you sit in front of is going to respect that kind of dialogue so much more. And that's what I did when I was younger. I leveraged what I knew and my track record. And when it came down to the point in the resume where they're like, I see that you have high school here, but you don't have college. Is that a typo? And I'm like, well, I never went to college. And then they start, kind of trying to throw stones like, oh, this position is for a bachelor's degree person. And I was like, well, let's be honest here. If I would have graduated, college with a 4-year bachelor's degree, which would be at this point now, I would not have any track record, and you'll be taking a chance on me on not having any relevant experience other than pushing paper clips in an internship. Or, and then when you can like flip the script, like, hey, I'm an investment. I have a track record versus like trying to go in with a different approach of not looking at yourself as an investment opportunity. It puts you on the defensive rather than the offensive of getting whatever you want, especially if it's a job.
Right. And it's your personal value proposition at that point, just proving to them, here's what I've done and here's my track record and the skills I've acquired. So I love that.
Yeah, man. You gotta first know how to sell yourself, and then you can sell anything to the world.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. So
I was kind of going through the getting a lot of different really great jobs. My last job actually was a C-level position at a very large financial firm, around $3 billion assets under management. And that was the time that I realized, after getting paid a great salary for someone who, didn't have a college degree and was maybe, I think, around 22 at the time, 22, 23. And I was getting paid over 6 figures, and I had a great bonus plan every year. And at that point, I realized that very fundamental meaning of fulfillment. And I think for most millennials, I always thought like making money is going to be the answer to all my problems. If I have money, I could be happy. And the whole, that whole mindset. And then you hear like, the good old, Yodas in the world saying, oh, money's not everything. And you're like, how is it not everything? But I actually experienced that firsthand, because I was in a job that I felt secure, was making money, but I absolutely wasn't feeling fulfilled. I hated it. And I kind of was at a point where I grinded so hard to make a certain type of kind of paycheck that I realized like it doesn't matter if I get that to that point of what shows up on my bank account. It's all about if what I'm doing, it makes me happy, and that happiness currency reflects almost the same amount of money, if not more, in my bank account. And I just kind of realized that it wasn't for me. And I the worst thing that happened in my life was also the best thing that happened in my life, because when I started getting that feeling, naturally I was trying to, my entrepreneurial roots were starting to like seep through the grass. And I was at an investment firm, but I didn't have my Series 7, so I couldn't talk about what was happening in the stock market. Essentially, that is something I can't talk about. So I talk about what I knew, and that was marketing. So whenever I was with clients or I was in events that were involved around that community, I just talked about what I knew, and I was always around like business owners and very successful business owners and C-level executives, and they were blown away. They were really impressed with what I knew. And that opened up dialogue to, hey, you mind talking to my marketing coordinator? Hey, you mind helping me out? Hey, you mind giving me some advice? And I was just saying, sure. I thought that would be the added value I could give to the clientele. Well, what happened was it kind of got out, and it made the suspicion that I was like doing this thing, which I actually wasn't at the time, but it did open my eyes, like, about company culture. And the culture there, they kind of looked at my intelligence and what I knew as like their own personal IP, and they controlled it. And I was like, and they kind of put me in a position where I was like, you can either choose to do this or we got to fire you. And that was when I kind of realized, like, you know what? I got to stop being a little pansy and just do it. And I quit and had to call, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And around that time was around this, like, it was like weeks later, I was planning on like buying a ring and doing that whole new phase of my life. And now
sure.
you got a guy who all the money that he saved up for a ring is going to be going towards a business, and a girlfriend who's been with you for years. I'm talking years, since high school, who finally sees like the person that she was with since in high school have like a kick-ass job, security, throw it all away, and now there's no security. I went from a pretty good catch to like the worst catch in like a matter of hours. But she grinded it out with me, and what was great is I applied my own knowledge and what I did, and within 14 months of starting the company, I grew it from of course zero revenue to over 6 figures a month, and monthly recurring revenue. And ever since then, it just kind of I focused diligently on learning how to grow and scale lean and productive, while also maintaining the integrity and all those aspects of making sure that we follow through on what we do for our clients. So yeah, it's been an awesome ride, and now I have the opportunity to try inspiring and telling people that anything is possible, and you don't have to have a certain pedigree of things before success should come.
That's an awesome journey. So thanks for sharing all of that. And I want to go back to a specific portion of that you were talking about, and that was your fundamental learning on fulfillment and the importance of that. And you mentioned that it doesn't come along with the paycheck. You've got to be doing that thing that you're passionate about and that really fills you up inside. But I know that there's going to be some folks listening, probably a piece of myself included, that says, it's so easy to say when you're up there and you're at that point in your life. But I want to see what advice do you have to people who aren't at that level where they've realized that on their own and the paycheck is still their focus. How can they learn that lesson without actually getting there and realizing that the paycheck isn't the prize? It's finding that thing that fulfills you.
Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, I know Gary Vee talks about it a lot, but it's something I've been preaching even before Gary Vee even mentioned it, when I was like older teenager, which is all around self-awareness.
Yeah, forget
right?
you, Gary Vee.
Yeah, screw you, Gary Vee. No, he's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
No, but realistically, he hits a strong point, and it's around self-awareness, because I think what people need to realize, is what are the intangible things that makes you feel happy, makes you feel good, makes you feel like there's purpose. And money does play a role, right? But for me, the purpose and the thing I felt was like, I knew, like, if you feel like while you're sitting in your desk or listening to this podcast in your car, driving to a job, if you're going into that job feeling like, ugh, feeling like you got like tar in the engine, and it's just like you're driving, but it's a clunky drive.
Mm-hmm.
If you wake up feeling like that, you got to start valuing, because I will tell you this, it's not going to get better. It's not. And even getting that raise, that's an extra $10,000 a year, which some people get excited for. And in my head, I'm like, that does not make sense. Realistically, after taxes, you're only making like $200 to $300 more a month. But people get excited about that. When in my head, I'm like, you could have started something of your own, and $10,000 could come to you within a month,
Right.
every single month. And like, but for some people, it's not money either. And I want to also encourage people, it's not about chasing the big bank account numbers. It's not about getting a bank account that is as much as your freaking, cell phone digits. It's about, it's really honestly about doing what you really love. And I think, especially with our generation, throughout school, we kind of went in as from like preschool to regular elementary school, middle school, all the way up to high school, like prepping for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like life. It was like, all right, when you're in elementary school, you got to get ready for middle school. You got to do all these tests, and you got to learn, and you got to do all these things for middle school. And then middle school goes into high school, and you got to do your SATs because you got to get into a good college, and then you got to go into a good college so that way you can get a even a better master's degree. But the problem in that philosophy is that we're just learning to get to another stage that still doesn't help self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if school and the way we were learning things was more encouraged around, before you become 18, we want you to amass as many failures and reward you on those failures before you turn 18. Because most people don't experience failure till they're out of college. They maybe feel mini failure with maybe not getting into a school they wanted to get into, or they got bad, score in their SATs or whatever the case might be, or a test. But that's not failure. That's just, you just didn't do good. It's not failure, because you don't learn anything. You don't, develop an asset from that experience other than I got to study harder.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would be interesting, and I think what most people need to start doing, is not look at failure as this thing that is like this ugly pit of like disaster. People need to look at failure as equal as to a victory, because there's plenty of people out there who haven't experienced failure, but they got that lucky win. It was a big win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I almost feel like, and I tell people this all the time, especially people that I'm looking to get in business with or partner with, one of the first questions I always ask them is, so tell me what your biggest failure was, or most recent failure. And if they say, I never really had a big failure, I'm like, I don't really want to talk to you anymore, because I don't feel comfortable knowing that this person hasn't really been through a trench moment. Because when you meet people who failed, it's like they develop a whole big, advancement in their IQ, because that experience teaches you not to make that mistake again, what you did wrong, how to evaluate, how to persevere, all these things that nothing in a classroom could teach you. And I think what most people need to start doing is being open to that, embracing failure. And for most people who especially are in the, in grinding mode of maybe doing the double life of I work for this company, but I don't really want to work for this company. I want to work for my own company.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that holds them back is that feeling of failure. Because who wants to be broke? Right? I mean, nobody really ever wants to be broke, but it's the biggest risk. And oftentimes people look at being broke as a failure marker. It's not a failure marker. It's just a financial marker. But what I tell even so many entrepreneurs who tried, failed, what I noticed that is when they failed, they went broke even, but what they learned and what they like their business acumen and the way they handle themselves and their knowledge. Take a year of trying to do something and failing, you probably acquired about 5 years advancement of knowledge and perseverance and business skills than you would have had having been sitting in that cubicle for that year doing the same rudimentary tasks that you've been doing for the last few months. And I guarantee you, even if you do fail in that endeavor and you want to maybe go back into the job force, you will go into your next interview proud almost, because if you realize, oh, you know what, I want to do my own thing, didn't really work out, but I do know I could add more value because I did it. So if I want to go in for a higher position, I could go in there with confidence because I could bring what I've experienced and share my failure and how I'm not going to make that happen for this maybe new up and coming company.
Mm-hmm.
And people forget, like, that's valuable. That is so valuable. And that's where it goes back into learning how to use yourself and almost view yourself as an investment opportunity. And trust me when I say people would rather judge you on your losses than your wins.
Yeah, that strikes such a chord, and I think another piece to that is when people are feeling that fear of trying something new and getting out there and really going after what they're passionate about, what they want to be doing. The other piece that to consider is, yes, exactly what you just said. If you fail, you're going to learn so much from that you can easily come out ahead, whether it's in a job scenario or with whatever your entrepreneurial journey is. But also, what is the opportunity cost that people have of not going after that thing that they want to go after? Because it's so easy to sit there and look at your salary and your biweekly paycheck and say, well, this is what I'm going to lose if I go after that. Or if I start this and then in 6 months I quit to go full time with it, I'm going to lose this salary. But it's harder to take a step back and look at that opportunity cost of, what am I missing out on by not going after it? What opportunities could be coming up that I'm completely cutting myself out of? So I love the direction you took that.
I like to say there's no greater debt than the debt of not doing what you always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can always pay back monetary debt eventually, right? Or you could go bankrupt and it'll go away, right?
Exactly.
But you can't.
Loopholes.
But you can't mentally go bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
That debt of feeling like you didn't do it and you became indebted to yourself of not taking that chance will last forever. It'll last forever. And, millennials, we're in that age gap where we have this last bit of window before real life really kind of puts their last nail in the coffin when things get even more difficult to take a risk. Because when you get married and you have kids, like imagine having a little drooling baby in the corner of your place, and you're like, your paycheck is securing the safety and everything you need for this new being you brought in your life. It's almost scary. I know I personally would have been scared, and that was one of the biggest reasons why I was like, I gotta freaking do this, because I know like I'm gonna be stuck because I have to like self-sacrifice now.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be much more difficult. So like it blows my mind when I see people who are younger not taking the chance. A year of trying to do something is not going to kill you. But a year trying to do something later in life could implode you.
Yeah, and I think that's true of whatever stage you're at. So even if you do already have kids, and I'm sure there's listeners who do, thinking about it it's never going to be easier to take that risk, right?
Mm-mm.
So maybe you have one kid right now and you love that child with all your life and you're relying on your paycheck. But think about when your next kid comes along, or when your child is now a 5-year-old and starting to get involved in expensive sports and things like that. It's never going to be easier. So why not go after it now?
Yeah. And you know what the funny thing is? Some people are like, I'm going to stick with this and work here forever because it's security, right? A few months ago, a family friend, dad, got laid off. Worked for the company. Classic baby boomer resume where they've been with the company for like 15, 20 years, right? Went up the ranks. But unfortunately, businesses have peaks and valleys just like everyone. And when those peaks and valleys happen, especially the valleys, or when new technology starts to disrupt maybe a little bit of the marketplace, the easiest thing to take off to keep maintaining a solid profit margin for a business are employees. So for me, I find it scarier to know that I could have invested a quarter of my life almost to a company who could leave me without nothing when I got myself comfortable and then trying to go back into it after the fact. That just scares the shit out of me. I personally think like I rather control my fate a little bit and say like, okay, well, if this goes down in flames, it's because I almost let it go down in flames, or at least I saw it coming. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's scary to think like, the the other side of the fence isn't all peaches and rainbows either. It's almost equal risk in today's age, because even if the company doesn't go under, doesn't mean someone could take your position. It's like the same mentality as if you are in your own business and you had competitor brands in your market space. Essentially, you as an employee, you got 100 times more competitors who have the same job skill as you. And all you need is that one day that maybe things don't work out, and now your fate relies on your superior on if you're valuable or not. So I mean, like, there's so much I could rant about this forever. But the biggest thing I really want to articulate is if someone is feeling, like I said in the beginning, that feeling, and it's like you're not whistling to your office. You're just kind of like feeling like you're almost autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
You start really thinking about where your passions and where your focus and happiness really reside. And it's not going to be the money, because anything that you do can make money. And for most of you guys, equaling the amount of the money that you're getting paid now is actually easy once you start getting going, and can multiply as things keep growing along. But like, I encourage every single person to start exploring yourself and seeing what you could do. And the hardest part is getting started. That's no doubt. But when you kind of got what you want to do, put those crosshairs on it and just fire at will. And do it smart though. Don't create suspicion. Do it on your off time. Try not to get too distracted during your daytime, because that's going to be providing, essentially your seed capital. Till you have enough legs, or maybe you score an investment, from a seed investor or whatever it might be. But play smart, because when you're starting to play double agent, as you've seen in the movies, it could get ugly. So, I encourage everyone to develop that third eye of exploring and finding opportunities that suit whatever lifestyle or need or desire that you want.
I love that insight. And so, Nick, before we wrap it up here, I want to ask you clearly have had a number of successful mentors who have helped you along, even from a young age. You mentioned at 18, you were getting some great advice from some influential people in your life. So is there one piece of advice that sticks out from the rest that has really been a game changer for you, or something that you would at least like to pass along to the listeners of the show?
Sure. One great piece of advice, right? And this is something that I always thought of when I was younger, especially. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You just got to be the one who is going to work harder and hustle harder than the people in the room. Because ultimately, that is going to be the thing that makes you win.
I love it. And I think it's so true. And I think that is a beautiful place to start wrapping it up. And Nick, I know people are going to be listening to this episode and want some more Nick Kullin in their life. So where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. So you can follow me on Instagram if you write Nick Kullin, and my last name spelling is a little interesting and different. Let me turn off my phone. Sorry.
No problem.
It's Kullin. So Nickkullin, not the traditional spelling. So the other way you can reach out to me is the same way, through Twitter. And if you want to schedule a meeting with me, maybe you have a business or you want to brain swap some ideas, you could even reach out to me personally to talk shop. I'll give you my actual personal online booking link. So, on the show notes, you can see it, and, Brad can hook you up. It's meet, MEET, me.so/ my name, Nick Kullin. And I would bring up a web page that will show you my available times that I have throughout the month, and choose a date, time, whichever works best for you, and we could talk and see if maybe we could join forces and I can help you out with whatever you're doing.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being so generous with your time, Nick. And we'll definitely have all of those places linked up in the show notes at millennialmm.com/podcast, where you can find any of the links or anything that was mentioned throughout this show. So thanks again, Nick. This was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing the insights that you've picked up along your journey.
Hey, no problem. And Brad, thank you for inviting me on the show.